The Supreme Court confirmation of Judge Amy Coney Barrett is headed to the Senate floor. Final votes will be held on Monday. In what was far from a normal vote, the Senate Judiciary Committee approved sending President Trump's third high court nominee to the full chamber. The 12-0 vote came unilaterally from Republicans as Democrats on the panel protested. Prior to the vote, Judiciary Chairman Lindsey Graham congratulated his GOP colleagues on getting her nomination through the committee.
This is why we all run. It's moments like this that make everything you go through matter. It's moments like this where you can tell young conservative women there's a place at the table for you. This is a groundbreaking, historic moment for American legal community and really politically.
Democrats boycotted today's vote, opposing the swift nature of the proceedings. Within the chamber, cardboard cutouts of everyday Americans who could lose health insurance if the High Court overturns the Affordable Care Act sat in Democrats' seats. The justices will hear an argument on that case a week after the election. Democrats accuse Republicans of not following the rules they themselves set. You will recall the GOP blocked former President Obama's attempts to nominate Merrick Garland to the Supreme Court 4 years ago. This morning, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer called the process illegitimate.
Democrats will not lend a single ounce of legitimacy to this awful, awful hearing. We are voting with our feet. We are standing together, and we are standing against this unprecedented mad rush to jam through a Supreme Court nomination just days before an election.
But their actions are largely symbolic. Republicans have 53 seats in the Senate and only require a simple majority to give Judge Barrett the lifetime appointment. When they do, it will solidify a 6-3 conservative majority on the High Court. I want to turn now to Alan Jenkins. He's a professor of practice at Harvard Law School. Professor Jenkins, great to have you. Thank you so much for being with us. So you've argued before the Supreme Court before as an assistant solicitor general in the Clinton administration. What will change for litigators once the court has a firm 6-3 conservative majority? Will that shape the way arguments are presented?
Well, Tanya, depending on the issue, it's going to change everything. So none of us alive have seen a court that is so predictably hostile to constitutional rights and civil rights and freedoms as this court will be if Judge Barrett is confirmed. So, you know, in past eras, until quite recently, Justice Kennedy was the swing vote. He was very conservative, but he listened and he learned over time. He became more open to the threats to individual rights and constitutional rights. And we saw that reflected, for example, in his decision in the marriage equality case of Bergefell. This, in my view, this change, if it happens, is coming at the worst possible time as Americans are awakening, some for the first time, to the pervasive nature of racial discrimination and injustice in our country. And so I fear, but you know, I'm open to observing the facts, that it's going to become much more difficult to assert and protect those rights in a new Supreme Court.
When you look at the process of appointing this new Supreme Court justice, do you view the process as legitimate? Aren't Republicans within their constitutional and political rights to appoint Justice Amy Coney Barrett?
Well, does what the Republicans are doing violate the Constitution? No. Does it violate basic principles of honesty and fairness and entrusting in the democratic process with voting for the next president going on right now? Absolutely. And I think that's why you're seeing folks, including some people of both parties and independents, so agitated about the timing and the rush on this nomination.
So let's talk about a few of the issues that are likely to come before the court sooner rather than later, starting with voting rights. Earlier this week, the Supreme Court declined to intervene in a Pennsylvania case for now, allowing mail-in ballots received 3 days after the election to still be counted. Only Chief Justice John Roberts sided with liberals in the 4-4 ruling. Now, the conservatives cite that once Barrett solidifies that conservative majority, will cases like this have a different outcome? Cases, for instance, that might directly impact the 2020 election?
Well, so we don't know, but all of the indications that we do have suggest that it will. So this is a court that was already quite hostile to voting rights before this latest vacancy came open. So this, of course, is the court that struck down a key element of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which has then allowed a lot of the chaos and, closing of voting options and some of the voter suppression that we're now seeing. And, Chief Justice Roberts was the author of that decision. But it's also the case that the Chief Justice cares about the integrity of the court, and he does believe in the power of the federal government to solve tough problems and to live up to high standards of integrity, which is, I think, why we saw him join with the three moderates on the court to decline to intervene in that Pennsylvania Supreme Court case. But President Trump has told the American people that he wants to get Judge Barrett on the court as Justice Barrett before the election so that she can rule on any disputes that come before the court. And she has herself, although she does not have a broad jurisprudence around voting rights, again, all of the indicators is that she does not consider voting rights to be on a par, for example, with gun rights. And so, I think it gives one pause regarding what might happen if this election, the outcome comes before this court, as the election outcome of the year 2000 came before that Supreme Court.
So let's also talk about abortion rights, something that a lot of American women are clearly concerned about. Now, you clerked for Justice Harry Blackmun, who wrote the majority decision in Roe v. Wade. How do you see the fight over abortion rights playing out in the courts once Barrett is confirmed?
Well, Justice Blackmun wrote for the majority, and it was a relatively uncontroversial decision at the time, that a woman's fundamental decisions about her body, about her reproductive health, the most intimate of decisions, that she's protected in making those decisions from intrusions by government. And that has continued to be the case. Roe versus Wade survives, but it has been consistently whittled down and chipped away by successive Supreme Court nominations and by state governments. And so, we can assume that at best for reproductive rights, that chipping away is going to continue. And there are, over a dozen cases that we would expect to reach the Supreme Court in the next couple of years where the court will have the opportunity to do that. We also know that President Trump has been quite clear in saying that he would only appoint justices who would vote to overturn Roe versus Wade and to deny that right to choose to women. Several members of the Senate have said the same, that they have a litmus test and that she's passed the litmus test. And we know that Judge Barrett is on the record personally opposing Roe versus Wade and seeking to see it overturned. So I think it really casts a chill over the right of women to control their bodies. And I think we can expect that those rights will at least be diminished and maybe eliminated if Judge Barrett becomes Justice Barrett.
So before we go, very quickly, I want to get your thoughts on the possibility of a democratically controlled Congress adding Supreme Court justices in the future to sort of balance out this ideological imbalance, if you will.
Well, so like my previous answer, this is something that the Constitution allows, that has been done before. Both the framers in the early part of our nation's history and later at the time of Reconstruction after slavery, when it was crucial and Congress took a leading role in ensuring that formerly enslaved people got the full rights that the constitutional amendments were intended to protect. They both expanded and reduced the number of justices. And so this is not new. It's consistent with original intent, if you will, because it was done by the founders of our nation and by those that created our more modern set of freedoms. And I think you see the Democrats, many of them laying the groundwork for the possibility of doing that by making clear that the consideration of Judge Barrett is an act of hypocrisy by Senator McConnell and Senator Graham, who swore that 10 months or 8 months to an election was too soon to consider Judge Garland, but now are rushing ahead. So we'll see. I mean, it's a matter of some contention, I think, in Democratic circles, but it is certainly within the realm of reason and constitutionality.
All right. Well, Professor Alan Jenkins of Harvard Law School, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.